Hello guys, I am back from another video, and today we talk about what if Deku was reincarnated into Genshin Impact. So in the last video we talked about how after waking up from his, sleeping time, he would notice that Amber was, in a state of undress near him. And let's just say he was pretty embarrassed. So, after, getting breakfast and basically changing their clothing, they would start to leave, but before that, she would basically embarrass, Izuku by telling him that he had a nice butt. And let's just say everybody was just like looking at him and looking back at Amber, and let's just say now they're basically the talk of the whole, neighborhood now. Yeah, he doesn't really want this all that much. So, after arriving at the residence of their teammate, specifically a girl by the name of Noelle, as when, Izuku meets her, Izuku would notice that she's wearing a mix of knight's armor and a maid outfit, which, let's just say, Izuku was a bit weirded out, but, you know, just ignores it. So, after going on their first mission, after getting, Izuku a new weapon, which is this thing, which allows him to use both cryo and also hydro energy by basically, channeling it into the, large claymore. And apparently their first mission is to take down 15 hilichurls, and these specific hilichurls were basically disturbing nearby merchants. And so, after defeating them with the help of Noelle and Amber, they would basically, start to leave. As Amber would basically say goodbye to Noelle, they would arrive back home, but they would have a unexpected guest. These unexpected guests were both Paimon and also Lumine. Let's just say Izuku was not expecting that. Apparently, Lumine and, not Amber, I meant, Paimon were basically kicked out of the, wait for a second. Kicked out of their, apartment, which, let's just say, for several reasons. And one of these reasons is by, not paying their, rent. So apparently they're gonna be crashing here from now on. Let's just say Izuku was not really happy about this. And for, Amber, she's also pretty not happy about this, but for another reason. Mostly because she wants to be alone with her, childhood friend, aka, Izuku, aka her, somewhat crush. So, after, a bit of talking, apparently Paimon is going to be sleeping in the couch with, Lumine, as they would start to go back to their, room, which Izuku is being forced to stay in, Amber's room, which, let's just say, he's not really happy about, but still, they're still childhood friends, but, they're technically adults, so let's just say it's a bit weird. So, Lumine was told by Paimon that she's going to be sleeping alone there because, she wants to sleep alone there. And she basically tells, not Amber, I meant Lumine, to basically sleep with them instead. So, after arriving at the room, they would basically, or in this case, Lumine would basically, sleep right next to, Izuku, sleeping behind him, as after feeling his warmth, she would basically fall right asleep. And so, that is basically what happened last episode. And so, let's talk about what happens next. So, when Izuku wakes up, he would feel, well, two people. Izuku would look in front of him and just see Amber as usual, which Izuku, sort of got used to it. But when he looked behind him, he would look and see Lumine. Izuku would start to panic inside, thinking, what the fuck just happened? As, well, he would look and see that she was not wearing, she's just basically wearing her underwear and just her bra. Which, instant panic attack. So, after seeing that she's merely almost naked, well, let's just say Izuku is starting to think, what should I do? As Izuku would start to, try and get out of there, but he would hear that Amber is starting to wake up, which Izuku would, quickly pretend to go to sleep, or still be asleep. When Amber wakes up, she would basically, rub her eyes as she would look back at Izuku. She would just look pretty happy until she sees, Lumine. Then she slowly starts to have a weird looking aura around her. And they would see, Izuku would basically slowly open his eyes and see that, a aura around her and a gigantic ass monster basically, right behind her, as she would say to herself, or at least say out loud, "So, Lumine decided to drop in, eh?" She would basically grab her bow, or Baron Buddy in this case, and you probably know what happens. Nearby, somebody is basically, basically waiting outside, out the gates of, Amber's house, and that person was a red-haired man with, wait for a sec. The audience would see a red-haired man with reddish eyes and seems to be wearing a pretty nice suit with gloves. As he's basically waiting well, for both Izuku and also Amber. As you start to say, where are they? As you start, basically, just looking at the ground until he hears an explosion. As you'd look over and see where approximately, the room of Amber is. As Amber is over there, basically, they're just like angry, and Lumine basically stuck to a wall, still wearing, nothing but her underwear and bra, and Izuku basically on the ground, basically, knocked out and sort of awake. And I mean, just imagine like his face is basically, full, like there's lots of like, dark ash across his face, as his hair is basically like, like an afro at that point, and yeah, basically similar to that type of situation. As Diluc would say this, well, that is, not Ruby, I meant Amber would say, "Oh, hey Diluc," as, Izuku would look back and see the, red-haired man, as he would say this, "Hurry up and get changed, we need to talk. Especially you, Lumine." As you'd basically look back at Lumine, as Lumine would say this, "Sure, I'll be right there, just let me get Paimon." She would say, as she would basically fall to the ground, like, like a piece of paper. Let's go to a few hours later. So, a few hours later, as Izuku and, Lumine and also, Amber are basically changed, with Paimon basically by Lumine's side, as they would start to follow Diluc. As Izuku would say this, "Who is this guy?" As she would say this, "Oh, this is Diluc. He's sort of a friend and a former knight of Avonius." As he would say this, "Former?" He would basically look back at the man as he would say this, "Let's just say I don't really like the Knights of Avonius. Let's just say that." He would say, as they would start to follow him into a nearby tavern, as he would start going towards the, door as he opens it. They would see a few people basically chatting, including some familiar faces, like, for example, Eula and the, witch hat wearing girl with the blonde hair. And they would see a, well, an interesting sight. They would see a girl, or at least he thinks so. He seems to have two, like, colored hair, more specifically, a darkish hair color fading into a color that's similar to the animo color, or the, animal, or the animo, energy, base color. You basically get it. As he seems to be flat out drunk, as he would say this. He would basically sigh, as he would basically, tell everybody to basically get out of here because it's going to be closing soon. So, as everybody's basically moving out of the, moving out of the tavern, as he would say this. "So, mind getting out of your drunken stupor, Venti?" as he would say this. Sorry about that, Diluc. I was just a bit drunk, and it just felt really good to whine. As he would say this. Drunkard, he would say. Anyway, you said you want to talk to Lumine, right? As he would say this. Well, yeah, I forgot. He would basically, go into a serious mode as he would say this. And by the way, who's this guy? As he would point at Izuku as he would say this. The name's Izuku. Nice to meet you. As he would say this. Oh, hello there, Mr. Izuku. The name's Venti. As Izuku would say this. Nice to meet you, Venti. But either way, why are we here exactly? As he would say this. Well, I think I have you know, a good idea, he would say. As one of them would say this. Then what is it? Said, Lumine. As he would say this. Well, I have a way to basically stop Stormterror. As everybody would just perk up at that. But not Izuku, he would say. You mean that dragon that I keep hearing about? As, one of them would say this, specifically, Diluc. Yes, Stormterror. He's been terrorizing the entire, kingdom of, wait for a second, the entire city of Mondstadt for a while now, so how do you know how to stop it, Venti? As he would say this, don't worry, just give me the Holy Lyre, then just bring it to me and I'll talk to the Stormterror. As everybody would start looking at him, as Izuku would say this. You said talk to Stormterror. Am I wrong, or as he would say this? Yep, I'm gonna talk to Stormterror. He would basically say that as Izuku would start to think. Is he super drunk that to the point that he's basically, going crazy or something? As he would say this. Don't worry, I got this. And besides, I can easily, yeah, easily do this all by myself if you get me the Holy Lyre, okay? As after hearing that, Izuku would start to think, I know I shouldn't trust him, but as he would start looking at Lumine, as Lumine would say this, sure, let's do it. As after hearing this, Izuku would just look at her and he would say, do you really trust him? He looks like the type of person that you would probably find in, any type of bar. One of those, complete drunkards. As, wait for a second. As Diluc would say this. I do agree, but we'll just have to believe it for now. As Izuku would say this. Are you... Okay. It seems that I'm going to be listening to this drunkard over here. As he would say this. I'm not a drunkard, and I have a name, The name's Venti. As he would say this. Sure, Venti. He would basically say. As he would say this. Either way, just, get ready, because we're gonna, go. So, after hearing this, they would start going into the church. Which Izuku has been, looking forward to it ever since he came back here. Because he's been wondering what happened to the church ever since he was gone. So, after going into the church, he would see, well, a few people there, mostly praying, and Izuku would see a few people. One of them was a normal, ish nun, and a few other nuns. But one of them seemed to stand out. As Izuku would look wide-eyed, as Izuku would say this. Wait, is that you? Is that you, wait for a second. Is that you, Barbara? As after hearing that, the girl would basically, turn around and, yes, it seems to be Barbara. As Barbara would say this. Izuku? It's been a long time. She would basically run over there as both of them would hug. Currently with a certain, two girls, specifically, Lumine and, Amber, they're currently kind of jealous. And going towards a different area, or specifically a different perspective, another girl specifically, well, wait for a second. Another girl currently with, Noelle is basically, sweeping the floors of the, home that she's living in, as she would feel immense, anger. As she would say, I feel like somebody's flirting with my Izuku, she would basically say. As we go back to Izuku, as Izuku's still being hugged by, her, aka, Izuku's, childhood friend, aka Barbara. As she would say this, what are you doing here? And, whoa, you certainly had strange. As she would basically look at, Izuku and see his, well, his more matured face. As she would say this, so what are you doing here? Are you here to pray for, Barbatos or something? As Izuku would say this, no, we're here for the Holy Liar. After hearing this, she would say, oh, you mean the legendary artifact of Barbatos? Unfortunately, it's been stolen. Everybody would hear this as one of them would specifically say this. Wait, stolen? Said Lumine, as she would say this. Yeah, it's been stolen ever since the Fatui have arrived. As Izuku would say this. It might be a hunch, but it's probably some sort of, connection between the Fatui and the, as, one of them specifically said this, specifically Amber. I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, right? As Izuku would say this, yeah, coincidence. He would basically roll his eyes because he knows that it's probably them because, ever since he came here and started noticing these people, noticed the Fatui from Shneznaya, or at least I think that's the pronunciation. I'm not really good with, Russian because, it's based off Russia, Shneznaya, because, Tsaritsa, it's basically, the Russian word for queen, so yeah. So, after, hearing about, like, after looking around and basically seeing several, like, members of the Fatui, he would not trust them, mostly because of what they're doing, mostly because, back when he was still, still with his family, he would remember that he would basically, started working with the Fatui. And apparently they were currently planning on basically, stealing the lyre. But it was after, the whole, death of his entire family by the hands of a certain, well, Rosaria. So, after hearing all of this, Izuku would say, I think I know who did it. As everybody would start looking at him. Sorry about that, wait for a second. So, after hearing this, they would start to say, so, who? As Izuku would say this. If I think so, they're probably running away right now. After saying this, we move to a few, minutes after. So, they're currently in the forest as everybody would start to look at a certain group of Fatui members. One of them was a, big burly guy, which was wielding a hammer. I can't remember the actual enemy's name. And he seems to be wielding some sort of, powers of electro. Another member that seems to be a Sissin mage, or at least I think that's the pronunciation. I'm just gonna call them a Sissin mage because, not gonna lie, I don't really know how to pronounce it. And they seem to have an electro, elemental affinity or whatever you want to call it. And another one that seems to be I think Hydro, yeah. A Hydro based, Fatui member that seems to be wielding a gun. Wait first. So, these seem to be something, weird about them. And they seem to be surrounding a liar. In this case, the harp of, Barbados, or the, holy liar. And one of them would say this, specifically this is a mage. So, what are we gonna do with this thing? As one of them would say this. We're going to bring it to what is her name? God dang it. We're gonna give it to La Senora for now. But we're just going to be staying here. As one of them would say this. Yeah. Too bad. This place is actually pretty nice, said the, hammer wielding one. As, all of them are basically, sitting around as Izuku would say this. Knew it. As one of them specifically said this, specifically, well, what's her face? Yeah, Lumine. Lumine would say this. So what are we gonna do? As he would say this. You said that you're able to use, um, you know, animal, right? As she would say this, yeah? As he would say, try and shoot out a blast of wind at them, and then I'll go in and use my kunais. As she would say this, sure. She would basically say that, as Izuku would say, hey, Amber, summon in Baron Bunny right now, and maybe even distract them. As she would say this, sure. As she would basically use her ult, as she would basically throw down Baron Bunny in, nearby them, as one of them, specifically the assistant mage, would say, why is there a dancing bunny there? As one of them specifically said this, specifically the one with the gun. Well, that's certainly interesting. As he would start to come closer to it, as Izuku would throw his kunais, as Izuku would say this, Lumine now! As Lumine would basically, shoot out her ult for the animal, element, as she would basically shoot it at the, burly one with the, hammer. After getting shot at, well, he would get stabs all across his body, as he would say, what the? As he would basically get stabbed, as he would say, the hell? Why did somebody, as he would basically look back at the assistant mage, which the assistant mage would just say, are you okay? As when the, gigantic ass man with the gun would basically come closer to the, to the ult of, Amber, he would get ready to touch it as it explodes right across his face, as it causes him to basically fly across the, area and causing him to basically slam into to the both of them, specifically the assistant mage and the hammer wielding one, causing them to be knocked down to a tree and be knocked out. So after doing that, one of them would say this, specifically, Paimon. Well, that is pretty smart, as Izuku would say this. Well, I mean, it makes sense, as Izuku would basically drop down, as he would basically put back his, large sword, or, his claymore, as he would grab the holy lyre. As after doing that, he would basically start, tell both of them, or all three of them, that they should probably get going before they wake up. And so they would start to leave. So, when it was about, nighttime, as Izuku would start to go with the rest of his, group, aka, Lumine, Lumine, Amber, and also Paimon are basically, following him towards, his bar, aka, D-Luke's bar. And when they arrived, they would see that Jean is over there as well. As, wait for a second, god dang. As Venti would say this. Oh, hello, as Izuku would say this. So I got your holy lyre, and, what are you doing here, Jean? As she would say this. Oh, I'm just catching up with D-Luke. As he would say this. Catching up? As, D-Luke would say this. We're not affiliated with each other. Besides, I'm never joining back with that stupid Knights of Avonius, he would say. As she would say this. It's not your fault, D-Luke. I mean, it's not, as he would say this. It is my fault, he would basically say. And he would say, I am no longer a part of that group, and you cannot stop me. And besides, I'm only letting you stay here because of, well, as he would start to blush, as he would say, whatever, he would say, as he would go back to, cleaning some dishes, as, Venti would say this. Alright guys, let's start going. As after hearing this, Izuku would say, so where are we going exactly? As he would say this. Well, somewhere that I know Stormterror usually stays at. As all of them would basically raise an eyebrow. Especially D-Luke and also, well, not technically, Jean, because she, wasn't informed of this, as she would say, wait, Stormterror? As she would say this, I meant he, aka Venti. Yeah, let's just say it's a bit complicated. So, after arriving at their destination, which was a cliffside, well, they would be told by Venti to basically stay in the, nearby, bushes. And when they did that, they would hear Venti start playing the Holy Lyre with a beautiful tune. Izuku would just hear it and think it actually feels kind of nice, almost reminding him back when he was still, back on Earth, aka back home, when he was basically still liking Heroes at the time, where he would remember these types of songs when heroes are basically dealting the finishing blow on a villain. And after Venti does the whole um, you know, playing of the lyre, they would hear the sound of a roar, as they would see a large blue dragon with several shards of purplish to pinkish to darkest, crystals around it. As, Venti would say this: Devalin, it's been a while. Please stop this. Stop terrorizing the town of, you know, the town of Mondstadt. As Stormterror would basically start to roar at him, as he would say this: it's not your fault, and it's not the villagers' fault. They just don't know. As after a while of basically talking, Izuku would basically say, does he really know how to talk to this dragon? To Stormterror? As, Jean would say, I didn't really know of this. And besides, Venti is usually the type of person that nobody believes in, unless if it comes to his songs or stories. And after a while of basically talking to Stormterror, they would start to hear laughter. And that laughter would be coming from this weird, short thing. It kind of resembles one of those, just imagine like one of those, characters from, or one of the character designs from, what is that called? Hollow Knight. Basically similar to that, but except much more fuzzy and, colored blue. Yeah, as they would basically start to laugh as you would say this. Don't believe them, Stormterror. They're nothing more than liars. They're nothing more than disgusting, deceitful bastards, he would say. As when Devalin heard this, or, Stormterror, which, Devalin Stormterror, if you didn't recognize that, it would start to roar as it would basically start to fly around. Basically, after Venti heard this, Venti would say, please don't! Please don't, Devalin. As when Devalin heard this, Devalin would somehow speak. It's probably not going to actually, in canon, it's probably not going to actually speak, but just imagine it actually speaks. So, it would speak out, I do no longer trust you, my former friend Barbatos. Besides, you side with those bastards. He would basically say that as he would start flying away with that weird-looking entity. And when Izuku heard that his name was Barbados, he would look back at Venti as he would say, you're telling me that you're Barbados. As he would start to laugh awkwardly, as everybody was in shock hearing that he's, Barbatos, the main god of Mondstadt, as you would say this. Yeah. He would start to laugh as, everybody would just be there thinking, how the fuck is he fucking Archon? He would, all of them would basically start to think. But, either way, they would basically start looking at him as one of them specifically says this. So mind telling me, what the heck just happened? As, Venti would say this. He would basically sigh as he would say this. Fine. Guess I'll just have to explain everything, I guess. And so, I'm gonna be leaving this episode right off here. Sorry, I'm gonna leave it off as a cliffhanger, but either way, I'm gonna be leaving it off here. So yeah, I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!